In the previous lesson, we imported some files like images, videos, and also audio to create a montage. So we are getting started here with Premiere Pro with the basics. We saw the features here of the project panel and how we can organize, manage, and start to create our projects in a more professional way in Premiere Pro. So in this lesson, we will continue and we will do other examples with other formats. We will see how to import PSD, how to work with tracks and layers, also how to import sequences using Alpha Channel, and we're gonna also go back to the preferences panel so we can set something else up, which is gonna be really important. And so I'm gonna just close everything here, close all projects, and start with a new project. And of course, this is going to be our lesson 04. So the first thing I want to do here is define a project name. And also, I want to explain a little bit more about the project. Now, we already make some demonstration that everything needs to be linked inside your Premiere project. Otherwise, you're going to have missing files. So one way also you can do this is choose a location. So I want to create here a new folder for this new project. I'm going to call this project 04. And here I want to store everything, the Premiere Pro file, but also the source files, so that everything will be together and I don't, I'm not afraid to lose anything. I don't risk to lose any source file. So I'm going to select this folder. And now let's select something that I want to bring in. So let me go here in photo, video, and I want to use a folder here that I have. So I want to bring in the entire folder this time, which contains pictures and videos. And here on the right side, let me just, no, I don't want to use any project template actually, and organize media. So I want to create a new bin to start to organize, and I want to call this project 04 and copy media. So if you activate this feature here, all the media that you have in a different folder, which is now not inside the project 04, but inside another folder in my hard disk, now all those files will be copied inside this other folder that I just created, project 4. And so I'm just gonna copy media and also create a new sequence here. I want to call this sequence 04. And that's it for now for this import phase, this first import panel. Now, I also want to suggest that you give a look to your space inside your hard disk, because projects, when you do animation project, 3D animation or a video projects, they tend to expand a lot, especially if you don't use compressed files. They're going to occupy a lot of space in your hard disk. So it's preferable that you have like an hard disk dedicated for this, and then you leave your operative system hard disk completely, well, not completely free, but as free as you can, as light as you can. Otherwise, it's going to get heavy and it's going to slow down everything. So when working with 3D software, but also with rendering, with video effects and video montage, we do need a lot of hard disk space, especially if we work with 2K, 4K videos. They are really big. They are like, 1 giga, 10 gigabytes. If they're not compressed, even more. So make sure you have an hard disk to plug in. In this case, I don't have it, so I'm gonna just use this device, but I'm gonna give you some extra hints later. So I wanna create this file, and there you go. Now what I can see here is a sequence of images first, and then moving on, there are some videos, and just got the format here of the sequence from the first file, which is this image right here. So we know that we can create more sequences, we can change the resolution, we can change the frame rate, the proportions and everything. We just saw that in the previous video. We talk about the frame rate, the file size, the resolution, the proportions, full HD, 4K, 8K, and so on. Now this one here, you see it's kind of a 4K image. So the sequence also just inherit that format from the first image that it got when importing a folder. Well, this happens when you import a folder, and also together you want to create an automatic sequence. And also we created automatically the first bin, the first folder here, which contains everything. So we may be more specific here and divide the images from the videos, etc., as we saw previously, but I'm just not going to go through that again. So this is again some resolution example image, and then we talk about the frame rate. Again, really important because it is going to affect the speed of your video. So you can change the speed, the duration, and also address here the FPS or frame per second. Now we already talked about logos and graphics that then don't have background, and these are usually PNG. And you can do this because they have an extra channel called the alpha channel. So the alpha channel is like a fourth channel after the RGB. So standard images, they usually have RGB and also videos. So red, green, and blue. And they're called also additive colors because if they are together, they're gonna give you white. The alpha channel instead is a fourth channel that has white to represent the visibility and black the non-visible part of the image. So you have some examples here. Now, alpha channel is important because, well, first because when we want to import a graphic, so we can also look for PNG graphics free on the web, like this one here. So in this case, I want to use this graphic like for, infographic or motion graphics, wherever. And I don't want to have like the whole background. I only want to have the graphics. So this is why we usually use PNG images or images with alpha channel. Now, what happens when you need to insert a video and you don't want the background? So in that case, we use alpha channel, and we usually use a sequence of images. Now, this website here is called PNG Tree. You can find some free stuff that you can use if you want to test the PNG and you don't have anything in your computer. So I do have something, but if you want, there are many websites where you can get PNG, which is raster graphics. It's graphic made with pixels. So you can see sometimes you find the PSD, which is the Photoshop file, and also the vector, which is scalable vector graphics. So it means that you can scale it as many times as you want. It's never going to lose quality because it's not made of pixels, it's made of vectors. Now I'm going to do more example about that. Now also, if you want to use 3D animations, one excellent software is Blender because it's free, it's open source. You can find also the course and many video guides in the channel. And I generated a video animation using Blender and using the alpha channel and created a sequence of PNG that I'm just going to show you shortly in this lesson. Now, I'm going to also make an example with Photoshop. Photoshop, it's able to create files, image files that contains layers. So it's kind of using different tracks like in Premiere Pro. And you can import directly a PSD format and also Adobe Illustrator format if you want. Now, the free alternative of Photoshop is GIMP. If you're interested, you find both in the channel as well. And also After Effects. You can import After Effects files, and they can be imported in Premiere Pro together with additional information. You can also import scalable vector graphics. Also, if you want a free open source alternative to After Effects, you can use Neutron, which is more similar to Nuke, but is still be used for video effects like After Effects. So now that we have done some examples here, let's start importing. So if I right click, I can import directly a PNG file. So I've already made this example before, but let's do it again quickly. So if I look for here a PNG, like a logo, so let me import here like this red logo. So I'm gonna import it right here. If I click and drag this, well, this is gonna work like in Photoshop. So the tracks, the video tracks that you have in Premiere are just like the layers that you have in Photoshop. So the top layer is going to go above the bottom one and so on. So right now I'm able to see what's behind that logo because this logo has a transparent background. Now if I move this movie up, you can see that that's gonna override, well, not override completely, but it's gonna overlap the logo. So be careful on the arrangement that you put these layers and or video tracks, and also be careful that your image contains a transparent background, otherwise it will hide everything that's behind it. Now I want to go to File, because also from here you can go to File and Import. Now before we import this time, I just want to show you that here, if you click, you can see all the supported media. So you can also go specific. So you have movie formats like AVI, and then you have Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe After Effects, and then you have RAW. RAW formats are pretty heavy because they are not compressed. So this is why usually when we work with videos, but also uncompressed images, they tend to fill your space in the hard disk pretty quickly. So that's also, you think, something you want to manage, and you want to be careful with. And also Final Cut, it's another software for montage. And then we have JPEG and Photoshop files and SVG, which is scalable vector graphics, and others. So I want to import Photoshop right now. So I can filter the search by just selecting Photoshop files. Now I do have a Photoshop course and a folder in my computer. So I'm just gonna search for it quickly. There you go. And here, if I filter this, I will be able only to see the Photoshop files and not like the videos or the images or anything. So if I go again back on the old supported media, now I will see everything like videos, images, and other stuff. So I created a lot of video guides and a lot of lessons about Photoshop that you'll find in the channel. So let's say I want to use one of these Photoshop file. Let's say I want to use this one here, for example, which is lesson 13. Now this is the image, but this is the actual Photoshop file. Now why you don't see Photoshop here? Because I don't have Photoshop installed at the moment. So the file is PSD, which is the format of Photoshop, but I'm using GIMP to open it. And in this case, I don't need to open it. I'm just gonna import it inside Premiere Pro, and you will see that I can use any graphic that I create in Photoshop, whether you do pictures, photos, infographics, motion graphics, graphics for whatever. You can just import it in Photoshop format. So there are some options here. So the first one is to import and merge all layers into one image. So if I do this, you can see that there's going to be only one image. It's called PSD. So if I click and drag this in here, let me zoom here with the timeline, clicking on this bar and on these circles, I can zoom in. So you can see that this is an image, and it's gonna again override whatever is behind. Now, if I go again and do file import, or Control I is the shortcut key if you want to be quicker. So if I get again the lesson 13, okay, the other option is not to merge the layers, but to get individual layers. So you can specify which layer you want to merge, or you can just go individual layers. And also here you have some options for the footage dimension, if you want the document size or the layer size. This makes some difference because document is something and layer is something else in Photoshop. So if you want to maintain the layer size, you can choose layer size here and just say okay. Now it created a folder, and inside the folder I have the 3 different layers that I've used to do this composition in Photoshop. So I can use now them separately. Now also something else I can, and you can see this is a bigger size. Now if I click the folder and click directly the folder and import it directly in my timeline, that's going to create a sequence of 3 different graphics separated. So that's another option. Now I want to delete the sound because it's annoying right now. So what I'm going to do is lock here this track, so you can also lock the layers, the video tracks, and delete just the audio from here. So audio 1 in this case. So I can select like this and just delete. And that's not gonna affect the video because I've locked the video. Now I can also unlock. So locking is kind of, protecting some of the tracks. There you go. So now I can go back and forward without actually hearing the sound in the background. Okay, let's continue. Let's go for another import. So this is an example with Photoshop. What again, we can use all the other formats. Now I'm gonna go in my After Effects folder where I have my video course in After Effects, and let's get another file like this lesson 16. And there you go. Now the format here is AAAP. So the problem here, as you can see, is that for After Effects, we need to have After Effects installed if you want to use this type of format. So for some formats, you need the actual software installed. For others, no, like Photoshop. So depending on which format you're going to choose, you will see. Now, another thing I want to show you, if I like make this window of Premiere Pro a little bit smaller, now you can see that it automatically opened Adobe Media Encoder. Adobe Media Encoder is another application that is going to be eventually used when you import and you want to like convert some files. So you can see these are all like Photoshop MP3 files that I've imported. This one here is lesson 13 PSD. So these are like some background operations that encoder will do for you in order to import. Now encoder, it's an excellent tool for exporting and also converting files and so on that we may see later on. So I'm going to close this, and you will also see it if you see the After Effects course, by the way. So we can close it now that we don't need it anymore. Now I want to start with a new sequence. So I want to close this one here, and now I don't see anything. And I'm going to import another file. So I'm going to go again, right click or Control I, and I'm going to go in another folder, in my Blender folder, where I have an animation, a 3D animation. Now, I don't know if you can find some of these on the web, but you can try. Otherwise, you can just, produce one in Blender. Now, I have here this animation like this. So this is with the video file, and also this one here, and this is with the background. This one is without the background. So let me just open this. Okay, and just want to create a new sequence out of this. So right click and just do a new sequence from clip. Now we see the back is black in there, and I want to push this up on this track right here because I want to put a background in there. So I can use an image, I can use anything. So I'm just gonna go and grab here. Well, let me grab this background, simple background. So if I click and drag, you can see that the background is not visible. Why? Because videos, they cannot have alpha channel. So I need to create a sequence of images with the alpha channel in order to remove that transparent, in order to remove that background. So I will delete this, delete, and instead bring in, so right click, import, and bring in this folder. But be careful, if I double click here, if I select only one image, that's what it's going to do. It's going to import just one image, and that's it. So this is just one single image. And this is the alpha channel. So if I, again, click and put it up and then use another, there you go. Now we can see that the background has changed, is visible. So it's actually transparent thanks to the alpha channel, thanks to the PNG. And also I can use the other layers that I imported from Photoshop, to create some additional graphics or whatever. By the way, you can also do animation in Photoshop, not only like static graphics, but it's, kind of smaller like Premiere Pro or After Effects than After Effects and Premiere Pro, sorry. So it works, but I need an animation. This is not an animation. So what we do when we use a 3D software is we export a sequence of PNGs like this. So it's going to go frame by frame, and each frame is going to be a PNG without the alpha channel. But when we import it in Premiere Pro, we need to make sure that this little checkbox down here is activated. It's called image sequence. So you can see that these are all numbered, and it's going to figure out the sequence thanks to the number. So be careful that the numbers are correct. So I will do open, and here is giving me a problem with the frame 0, but let's see if it is not. It probably is nothing wrong. So this is the sequence right here, which is called by the first frame name, so 000. So I'm going to click and drag, position this inside. And now if I press play, I can see that this is an animation and not a static frame. And it's running. Let's see here. If we move around in the project panel, we can see the frame rate. So it's running at 25 frame rate because this is the default. But we know that we can right click here and we can reinterpret this. So modify, interpret footage. We can change this anytime. Remember that if we increase the frame rate, like 30 frames, it's gonna have less duration. It's gonna be quicker. If I do like 50 frames per second, it's gonna be even quicker, but more fluid because it's gonna like have 50 instead of 25 frames per second. If I slow this down like 10 frames per second, it's gonna go slower, but it's also gonna be, lagging. Okay, so we can also reinterpret this anytime. But before we do that, let's check first with the background. So I'm gonna push this up here, and again I'm gonna get my background from here. So click and drag, and now we can see this is animated, but it also has the background. So I can, choose whatever background I want. I can use whatever image I have in my computer or even a video. So if I go in my video folder here, where I have all the images and videos, let me get a video file. There you go. So if I put this here, you see, and again, I want to remove the audio. Okay, so now you can see there is a movie there on the background. So this is how we can remove background from an animated sequence. And let me make this a little bit smaller. Now I want to reinterpret this. Now before you modify something from your sequence, one thing you can do is duplicate, so you don't touch the original. So if you duplicate, we can call this like, I'm gonna call this 000, and that's not a PNG anymore, it's a sequence. So I'm gonna call it 000 inverse and slow motion. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is right click and modify, interpret footage, and let's make this really slow, like 5. So it's gonna go 5 times slower than the original, which means it's gonna run at 5 frames per second. So really low number of frames. Okay, and what's gonna happen here is when I click and drag this again back in the timeline, you can see it's gonna be 5 times longer. So again, this is why the frame rate affects speed and duration. So if I press play, it's gonna go slow, but it's also gonna be laggy because these are only 5 frames per second. Now to make it inverse, to make this inverse slow motion, I right click and I'm gonna go to speed duration. Now I can also adjust the duration here. So I can fix the duration, I can fix the speed, and I can reverse the speed. So if I make this like going 500%, so 5 times the current speed, I'm gonna basically readjust everything to the original. But I also want to do reverse, so it's gonna go back forward. Now again, to see the changes here, I need to drag and drop again. So click and drag and drop again, you see the changes. And you can also tell that there is something different here because you see the little effects means that I applied some effect to that. So now if I press play, you can see this going forward and then backward at the same initial speed. Now let's just look what's going to happen if I just get that same folder and I drop it directly in the import panel or project panel, sorry, and it's going to create a folder as we know. And these are now considered as single images, which is not really great, but we can also fix that. So if I click and drag the entire folder in here, you can see that each one of that frame is going to have like, let me like turn something off, otherwise we have a strange combination here. Okay, so you can see that if I press play, these are still too slow sequence of image. So each image takes like 1 second, I think. So it's kind of going 1 frame per second. So really, really slow, really, really laggy and not fluid at all. So unless we want a slideshow, a sequence of image, we don't want this. So we need to adjust again the timing, but we're gonna see this later. What I want to show you is back in the preferences panel some of the preferences. So if I go to edit preferences, general, now let's gonna see some additional information about this panel. So first thing, general. Now we can decide if you want to show the home page at the startup or open the most recent project, which could be also useful. And then you can also decide what's going to happen when opening a project, and also the action for your mouse combined with Control Alt. Now I'm not going to go through all of these, but yeah, now you're starting to get an idea of what these mean, because before you didn't even know what these terms were or whatever. So now you probably know better and better. Now let's jump directly to something more interesting. Now we already talked about the appearance. Autosave also could be interesting because you can now lower down the automatically saving the file, because the more you get good, the more you're going to be faster, the more you want to save faster. So you can automatically save the project or not. You can also use different versions, and this will occupy some space. So you can lower this down if you want. And you also have options here for team collaboration. And let me just go forward here. I want to show you something here. So media, also we can find something useful like the indeterminate media time base. You can see it by default is 25 frames per second. So you can change the default like to something else like for 24 or 30. You can see it doesn't go lower than like 24 basically. And time code, also you can use the media source, or you can use a start 0. Frame count, also you can start 1 or you can start 0. Now this is just, smaller secondary um, options, but we can also come back later here. Now I want to show you here media cache. Now the cache is a really important concept in software like After Effects or Premiere Pro or similar. Why? Because everything we do here is kind of previewing what's going to be our final export, our final output, and to preview everything a good speed, having a good performance, well, it needs to store some temporary files. Those temporary files are also called the media cache. So these can be found at this moment here, this location right here, but you can also change it. You can browse, you can use another folder, or as I said before, it's better to use another hard disk, not the operative system hard disk. It's better to free your space in your operative system hard disk as much as you can and save everything in another hard disk. Also make backup copies in your drive or whatever. So make sure you have your operative system nice, free, and fast. Now you can also have some extra options here, and you can also delete the media cache files. So if you click here, you're gonna clean up everything, and you will need to like re-render some of the things that you have done. So probably it's best to do this at the end of your project, not while working on a project. Otherwise, it's gonna like slow down things. So keep your media cache there, until you finish the project. You can also change the media cache database again in another location if you want. And you can also do not delete the cache file automatically, or you can set up automatically cleaning like after 90 days. So you can set a time interval, or you can set a space interval. So when it reaches like this amount of space, then automatically delete the oldest ones. So you can see that you can easily arrive to this space if you're working with 4K or higher resolution, really long videos. They tend to go really high in terms of space, so you need a big hard disk to store them. So it depends on what you usually work with. If you work with small files or 4K, 8K, like 100 frames per second, meaning they have 100 images per second, and those are going to be really heavy. So that's something you sooner or later you need to have to deal with. So now you know where it is, and you know where to clean, and that's it. How you can set up, because otherwise it's going to give you an error message saying you don't have enough space in your hard disk. Now, when that happens, you will know why it's important to know about the media cache. Now, also memory, it's really important to go fast, quick, and fluid. So I've dedicated here 5 GB to other applications and the served, so 28 GB for Premiere Pro. And at this moment, I also have encoder open, media encoder. Otherwise, also for other Adobe Illustrator, After Effects, Premiere, Photoshop, wherever here, these are going to be reserved for the Adobe applications, 28. If you want to change that, you can change it, type anything you want, and the rest is going to be dedicated to Adobe. But make sure you give enough gigabyte to the operative system. Again, you cannot go lower like than 3, as you can see. So just put 4, which I think is going to be fine. 4 depends how many applications you run in the background. And then we have other stuff here. And in the timeline, you can set up a default transition duration. So these are all defaults that you can set: video transition, audio transition. We're going to work with transition later. And again, also come back here perhaps later if we need. Now, one thing I think is really important is this one here, the still image default duration. We saw that at the beginning they were like 5 seconds, they last 5 seconds. Now we can make it last 1 second, or also 1 frame. So if you want to do like a slideshow, probably you want to set up this as a longer duration, like 3 seconds or 5 seconds. If you want to have like shorter timing for these still images when you use them, you can use lower, yeah, especially if you want to use them like a sequence of images. So this will be all for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to stay updated for other lessons like this, and also other video guides, not only about Premiere Pro or video, but also 3D, 2D graphics, and much more. And if you want to thank us, if you want to support us, please join the channel as a supporter. This will again help us to make more videos, more video guides, and much more. And that's it. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.